All right, good afternoon. My name is Marty Blackson, and I want to tell you a story. And this is a traditional Appalachian jack tale. The name of this story is the Sock Doll. Sock Doll. So, when Jack was a young man, he and his mama lived high up in the Idaho hills, and Jack was a young man about to come of age, and his mama said, "Jack, it's time you go out and make your way in the world." And Jack was a good, clever boy, and he said, "Okay, Mama, I'll go down and get myself a job." So he came down out of those Idaho hills, and he came west across the Palouse, and it was late summer, and he noticed that the farmers were all harvesting their grain. So Jack thought, I'll get me a job harvesting grain. Well, maybe not harvesting grain, but I can get me a job in a grist mill somewhere, grinding that grain to flour. So Jack commenced to keep traveling until he came to a little town that had a grist mill, but it wasn't operating at the time. And Jack went around the town and inquired about why the grist mill wasn't operating. He noticed the town was a bit run down. Not a lot of people there, but people said, "Oh, it's not working now. There's some kind of curse on this town. Nobody's running the mill." So Jack then asked, "Who owns the mill?" So they told him who owned the mill and where the man's house was. So Jack then went up to the mill owner's house, and he had a big, fine house. The mill itself, as I said, was kind of run down, had a little house next to it. But Jack went up to the big, fine house, knocked on the door. It was early in the morning. The man came and answered the door, and Jack said, "Hey, mister, I'd like to run your mill for some pay, work for you." And the man said, "Oh, well, I would hire you. I will hire you, but I got to warn you that everybody that's operated the mill this year has been found dead the next day. We haven't had anybody stay to run it. That's why it's shut down now." And about that time, though, a woman came up behind the man. It was his wife. And this woman came up and said, "Oh, you need to sell that old mill and move me to Seattle." She put her arm out in front of the man and shoved him back, and Jack noticed she had a big, fancy ring on her hand. And the man said, "Oh, go away, woman. We'll talk about this later." And he told Jack, "Yeah, you can work the mill today, and we'll split the pay even. So go on down to the mill. There's a house beside the mill. I will meet you there at dark tonight, and we'll divvy up the pay. And you can stay in that house if you're willing, but I'm warning you that you shouldn't stay overnight there." So Jack went down to the mill. He said, "I'm not afraid of haunts or curses," to the mill owner, and he went on down to the mill. When he got there, he opened up the mill race and started the water wheel turning, and got the mill grinding. And soon, farmers from all over the valley started bringing wagon load after wagon load of grain for Jack to grind. And he would ground that wheat all day to make flour, filled lots of bags, made quite a sum of money. Worked hard all day, Jack did. Then around about dark, about sundown, there were no more wagons in line. Everybody had their flour and took it home. Jack had his sack of money. So Jack shut down the mill race, and he was about ready to go over to the little house and get some rest, when he turned around and he saw a big, tall man, skinny man, with an eye patch and a big walking stick come up with a small bag of grain. And the old man said, "Jack, will you grind my grain?" And Jack said, "Sir, I've never seen you before. How do you know my name?" And the old man said, "I knowed you when I seed you." So Jack said, "Well, I reckon that's just a little bit. I can grind it for you." So Jack opened up the mill race again and started the wheels turning. And he ground that little sack of grain for the old man. Didn't take long, gave it back to the old man. The old man said, "What do I owe you?" Jack said, "Oh, there's nothing. That ain't much. Here, just do it for free." And the old man said, "Well, I want to pay you something, so I have a gift for you." So he pulls out of his pocket a clasp knife and gives that to Jack and says, "Here, this is a magical knife. It'll protect you from evil." And it looked like just a regular pocket knife to Jack. It looked something about like that. And Jack said, "Well, thank you much. I could use that, I'm sure." And no sooner he thanked the man, and he turned around, and the man was gone. So Jack thought, well, that was odd, but he had a nice little pocket knife now. So he went back over to the little rundown house near the mill, and soon the mill owner came down, and they split the profits even. And Jack had a tiny sum of money, but the mill owner also brought with him a big ham steak he gave to Jack, and he said, "I know this is your last night on earth. I'll find you dead tomorrow like everybody else, but I want you to have a good meal." Jack said, "I ain't scared of haunts. It ain't no thing. But I'll thank you kindly for the meal. So Jack went in and built him a fire in the hearth and got out the skillet and got it hot and started cooking that ham steak. And he was turning it with his pocket knife as he did it, his new pocket knife. And Jack's cooking it up. Oh, he's starting to get hungry. He'd worked hard all day and this is going to be a good meal. And the moonlight's coming in through the window and there's 12 broken panes in the window. So there's just the frame, those 12 frames of those panes with the moonlight shining in. So Jack's using that moonlight to cook his meal. But pretty soon there's a shadow cast on Jack. And he turns around and looks at that window. And in the panes of that window, there's 12 black cats staring at Jack. He gets a little shiver, but he says, I ain't scared. And when he turns back around to his ham steak and keeps cooking it, there beside the skillet on the hearth is an even bigger black cat. It's the biggest black cat Jack has ever seen. This huge black cat sitting there and starts reaching its paw out toward his skillet. Reaching its paw out, and as it does that, it goes, "Sop, no!" Jack jerks that skillet back and says, "You get away, cat." He starts cooking some more, and the cat reaches out again to try to dip its paw in that grease and "Sop, no!" Soon, Jack jerks the skillet away again and says, "You quit that, cat." He keeps doing it. The cat keeps coming back, saying, "Sop, no!" Well, Jack then says, "Listen, cat." He's using his knife to turn that steak. So he shakes the knife at the cat and says, "You do that again, I'm going to lop off that paw. You can't sop in my grease." So that Jack goes to cooking, the cat reaches out again and says, "Sop, doll." And sure enough, Jack just lops off that cat's paw. And that cat squalls and runs from the building. And all the other cats disappeared too. And that kind of relieved Jack a bit. So he cooked his steak and ate it. Then he thought about, well, I should wrap that paw up and put it away somewhere. But when he went over to where the paw had fallen down on the floor, instead of a cat's paw, there's a human hand. And on that hand is a big fancy ring. Big fancy ring. Jack said, "Oh, I think I know where that's from." Jack wraps it up in a cloth and puts it on the mantelpiece, knowing he's going to talk in the morning. So he slept through the night. Nothing happened to Jack. Lucky him, I guess it was his lucky knife. But the next morning, the mill owner came down just to see, because he was afraid he's going to find Jack dead, just like all the other workers. So he came down, and Jack said, "Oh, something odd happened last night. I got to show you." So Jack told him the whole story about the cats and the cat's paw, and then he showed him the hand. And the mill owner said, "Oh, I know where that's from, and I know what's caused that." He said, "My wife woke up this morning and said she was sick, had me send to town for her 12 friends to come take care of her. And I know now that they're a coven of witches. Jack, we got to burn them up. That's what's cursed this little town." So Jack and the owner, they go down to the big fancy house and they board it up because they know those 13 witches are in there, the 12 and the wife. And they set fire to that house and they burn those witches up. And luckily after that, that town was able to prosper. And that's the tale of the sock doll.